Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Now, as we've been seeing the economy deteriorate. Now, we've been looking at retail for quite a while. Now, before the corporate media came out with retail apocalypse or retail Armageddon, and before they've even shown retail doing poorly, because back during that period they've been telling everyone how great it was, we've been showing how traffic has been drying up, how stores had less sales, how the sales during the holiday season was getting worse and worse. And then we started looking at the big picture, where the corporate media was talking about the weather, it was talking about online sales, it was talking about everything to explain away what was really happening in this country. And what is really happening in this country is that people don't have the money to go out and spend to keep all of this operational. Now, yes, the Fed, the government, they can give people government jobs, but they can't get everyone a government job. The Fed, they can manipulate all the numbers along with the government to make you think that the economy is doing well. But in reality, what happens is that the real economic indicators that show that there's problems, those surface, and they show you that there are many different problems in the economy. For instance, retail. As time went on, now think about this for a second. Back in 2008, 2009, retail was at unemployment was at 11%, 9%, and it was slowly dropping 8%, and they brought it all the way down to 4 point something percent, which is completely meaningless because we know it's completely manipulated. Now, as unemployment fell, retail was getting worse and worse and worse, which makes no sense because if there are more people employed, that means more people are shopping. Now, of course, they brought up the weather. They said it was stormy, it was rainy, it was snowy. This is why people weren't shopping, and this is why retail was getting hit. Once they couldn't use that anymore because it was becoming more widespread, they started to say it was because of online. It's the Amazon effect. And when you really look at the entire retail market, it's $1 trillion market. And right now, Amazon has a very little tiny piece of it. Actually, the online percentage compared to retail is only between 8 and 12%. So Amazon is not taking all the business away. It makes no sense. What we're seeing is that people, they don't have the funds to go out and purchase. This is why they've been propping up the auto loan industry by accepting subprime people. This is why they've been propping up the housing industry by allowing investors, hedge funds to go out and spend that free money that the Fed would give with very low interest rates. And they told them to buy houses, hold on to them, rent them if you can, but don't let them on the market because they needed to build their illusion. And what we're seeing from Macy's, we're seeing it from Kohl's, we're seeing it from many different stores, their sales are down. I mean, look at Macy's. Right now, their sales have fallen by 2.5%, Kohl's by 0.4%. And we are seeing a lot of bankruptcies, and they've surged like never before. Even during the Great Recession, we've never seen anything like this. So retail bankruptcies right now, they've surged to 110% in the first half of this year. Now, let's look at some of these stores, because what we're seeing is that there are a lot of stores that are filing Chapter 11. True Religion, Cornerstone Apparel, Gymboree, AOK Enterprises, Rue 21, B&B, Pawn American Minnesota, Agent Provocateur, Payless, Gordman Stores, Gander Mountain, General Wireless Operations, H.H. Gregg, Vanity Shop and Grand Forks, BCBG, Michigan Sporting Goods, Sports Authority, Marbles Holding, the Wet Seal, the Limited Stores, and many others. I mean, look at Sears. I mean, we can go on and on and on. There are so many stores that are filing right now because what is happening is traffic is drying up. People do not have the funds. And as we go throughout this year, it is going to get worse and worse, not better. I know they're talking about jobs coming back to the United States. I know they keep saying, look at the unemployment, we're almost at full employment. This recovery is nothing like we've ever seen before because it isn't a real recovery. It's an illusionary recovery which was created by those individuals within government and the central bank. And they've been keeping it alive by using illusionary tactics. Now, they use this to convince everyone that they're doing a great job and the system is sound. Now, we've heard this before if we go back to 2008, where Ben Bernanke was out there saying that the subprime is contained. We're not forecasting any recession. We also have today Janet Yellen saying that we'll never see another crisis in our lifetime. This is all propaganda which they use. Now, UBS is out there, and they're saying the next credit crisis, and we've had a credit crisis back in 2008. This is why the banks, this is why the automobile industry, this is why all these individuals needed these bailouts. And it goes much further than that. It goes throughout the world. All the banks, and the Fed did it covertly, giving trillions of dollars around the world to keep everything propped up. Now, UBS strategist Matthew Mish says there's one thing that is certain about the next credit unwind. It will be unlike anything we've seen before. Now, he notes that unlike previous credit expansion cycles, this current one has been dominated not by traditional banks, but rather by non-banking lending entities and government-backed loans. And of course, this is in the subprime residential, auto, student loans. And unlike traditional lenders, government debt tends to be much slower to react to things like rising delinquency rates. And we've been seeing the delinquency rates rise. They've been increasing over time. Just like we saw retail declining, we're seeing delinquency rates increasing now. Slowly but surely, this is what's happening, because this is what happens when you bring in a lot of subprime people and they don't have the funds to cover what they've purchased, and this is what happens. Now, the next collapse in credit may come a little slower, since governments are far better than traditional lenders at burying their heads in the sand, but you shouldn't be too quick to buy into Yellen's delusions that we're not going to see another credit crisis or any type of crisis in our lifetime, because what is happening right now is they're trying to hold everything together. And eventually what will happen is we will see a credit crisis. Now, Bill Holter, he's been talking about this for quite a while, where he's been talking about how the credit system is going to freeze up. Now, what happens when the credit system freezes up is that there's no funds to loan out. Most of the trucking, most of the stores today, they run on credit. When that dries up, well, things come to a screeching halt. And what that means is supplies will not be delivered. Products will be missing from the shelves in stores. You will not be able to get certain things. And we've seen something like this back in the beginning of the fiat system back in the 70s, where it was a little tough getting products. People had a little bit tough time finding jobs because we were transitioning from one system to another. And this is why we were seeing that, crisis in fuel, where they said there's a shortage in the world. There was no shortage. It was we were going on to a new system, and they needed a lie to make everyone believe that this is why we're seeing this. They didn't want to say, well, we just ripped off all the other countries. We decided not to give their gold back to them. We decided to stop it and end the gold standard, and we're going to go on to the petrodollar system. Now, here we are at the end of the petrodollar system, and now this is coming to an end. And you can see throughout the Middle East, where the whole thing was set up, it's supported, it is completely falling apart. What we're seeing right now is the end stages of this system. And what we're going to see is, well, fuel might be a little bit hard to get. Supplies might be a little bit hard to get. We don't have a strong manufacturing base anymore. We might have a little problem getting exports out to different countries. We might have a big problem getting imports into this country. And this is why trade needs to be established right now, so we can go through this transition. And we definitely need to bring manufacturing back to this country, because if we don't, well, the country will not survive as a service country. Because once we stop being the reserve currency of the world, what else do we have left here? We have absolutely nothing. Because why would other countries deal with us? We're not the reserve currency. We're not producing that much. We can't continue on as a service type of country where people just buy everything that the other countries are creating. It will not work. We have to change things around and become an exporter. And this transition is going to be a little bit different because now we have trillions and trillions and trillions worth of debt. We didn't have trillions of worth of debt. Actually, we were on a sound system, partially a sound system, I should say, not fully. Now we're on a system that's completely breaking apart. I mean, what's going to back the dollar? What, the full faith and credit of the United States? Oil? No, it's not. And this is why China, Russia, and many other countries, they're taking precautions. This is why they're making bilateral trades with each other, dealing outside of the dollar, because they're preparing for what is coming. And this is what you need to do. You need to be prepared because, as you can see, this economy is breaking down in every single sector. And eventually what's going to happen, it's all going to break down. And they will not be able to stop this. And this is why we're looking at bail-ins. This is why we're looking at bank holidays. This is why we're looking at a disaster. And we know that corporations, they haven't been bringing in revenue. The sales are getting weaker. We know the tax receipts coming into the federal government, into state governments, they've been declining. So what we're looking at right now is a complete mess when things start to go south. And when they start to go south, it is going to be very difficult to stop, and I don't think they're going to be able to stop it at all. And we're going to hit rock bottom before we can pick ourselves up again and move forward.